Joining me right now is former Trump as well as George W. Bush State Department senior advisor. He is also former North Korean human rights deputy special envoy, Christian Whiton. And Christian, it's good to have you this morning. How severe is this? I mean, now China is saying that the number of deaths have slowed down, the number of cases have slowed down. Can we believe anything?
It's hard to know what to believe. I mean, their numbers are ludicrous. They say 80,000 cases and 3,000 deaths. I think you could easily add a zero to each of those numbers. But really, we're just guessing. I mean, this is the problem with China, is they're so opaque. Not only have they lied about this consistently, they demonized, imprisoned, possibly even killed some of the doctors who revealed this early on. They kicked out American reporters, kicked out Western reporters. So now they say they're over the hump. And frankly, given what they went through, and given the course of the waves in other countries, that may be true, but you just can't take that on faith that it's true.
Right, but because of all of this downplaying and because of the lies, it raises the question on the origins of this problem. So how did it start? You know, I mean, there's a lot of people who've been on this program, Senator Tom Cotton, Senator Marco Rubio, who continue to point to this bio lab where they're looking and studying disease like the coronavirus as perhaps that being the originating place as opposed to an open market. Is that why they keep hiding things, that they don't want to admit either a mistake or however it happened, it got out of that lab?
It's possible, and I know some senior administration officials who are suspicious of that. Frankly, though, I'm not sure why you design a bioweapon with mortality this low, although it may have been just an experiment gone awry. But it's interesting to see the lengths that they're going to suppress this internally and externally. Externally with the propaganda, trying to blame us, trying to change the topic, and internally, because they're facing a lot of pressure, a lot of turmoil. They tried to censor all of that off of their internet, but they were only partially successful. And, you know, I think come summer, you're going to see political unrest return in Hong Kong, but there's a real question of whether you also have it on the mainland. Xi Jinping is just sort of, this is the latest in a string of failures, and that sort of is, I think, an indication, a result of their just desire, their intense desire to suppress any news about this.
Yeah, well, we'll be watching that. It's a good point to see if and when the Hong Kong protesters come back. Christian, I want to switch gears, ask you about oil, and obviously prices are up this morning. But President Trump striking an optimistic tone yesterday regarding a deal between Russia and Saudi Arabia to end this price war. He's set to meet with oil executives tomorrow to talk about a possible assistance for the sector. How significant is this? And I guess want to get your take on, you know, Russia. No surprise that Russia sees a crisis in the United States as a good opportunity to pile on and send oil prices lower to knock out the shale industry here in America.
That's exactly what they'd love to do. And to recap how we got here, OPEC Plus was meeting earlier in March to actually constrain the output of oil. The Russians thought, no, wait a minute, that actually may help the Americans because it'll raise the price of oil. So they went rogue, and then Saudi went rogue and has increased production, cut the price of oil, and that's what's brought us to this point. I think the president has done a good job. He's spoken to both Putin and the crown prince in Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, known as MBS. The problem is MBS has a great deal of self-confidence and perhaps a failure to understand exactly how badly this is hurting his best ally in the world, the United States. I think the president is going to keep chipping away. As you point out, he's meeting with oil executives tomorrow. There's sort of a limit, though. I mean, some of them reportedly want to constrain U.S. output, but that's really not what we do. So this will probably go on a little bit longer, but I don't think oil, you know, one reason I'm long on Exxon and long on USL, I just don't think oil is going to stick around at $22 a barrel for very long.
Okay, but unless we actually see production cut, the supply-demand situation doesn't necessarily support much higher prices, right?
It doesn't, but Saudi Arabia and Russia can't keep this up for very long. Their budgets just don't work with oil, frankly, anywhere below 2030. I mean, Saudi can produce very cheaply, but it has an extremely expensive state and a massive royal family to support. Russia also, going into this crisis, wasn't in good fiscal situation. So both of them have an incentive to move on after at least getting through this initial display of whatever they're trying to do. Also, it's interesting to point out, Iran and Venezuela are really hurting as a result of this. They were already in terrible economic shape, and, you know, their one source of revenue has gone out the window.
Having said that, the shale industry is hurting with this price. They modeled much higher prices to operate their businesses. What would you say is the right percentage in terms of how many companies won't make it out of this? Will we see an increasing number of bankruptcies, as Russia would like to see?
I think so, and I think you're going to see less production in the United States. The market actually works, though. You're already going to see, frankly, they're running out of tankers. Saudi is renting them. They're loading tankers without an actual destination so far, and the price of actually storing gas is going up very significantly. Storing oil, I should say. You're going to see the market kick in, and you're going to see economic reality in Saudi Arabia and Russia kick in, and that combined with very strong pressure from Secretary of State Pompeo and Trump, I think eventually gets us through this. And then it'll take, the resumption of economic growth. But I think, throughout later in this year, you'll see an appreciation.
All right, we'll leave it there. We'll be watching. Christian, great to have you this morning. Thanks so much.